Quibi was a short drama app. So why did it fail?
I really believe that what happened was that you've got traditional Hollywood elite that with a lot of money, and they had a vision, or they could see that something that the media landscape was changing and consumer habits were changing. Good on them for that. But what they really tried to do was take the way they've been telling their traditional storytelling approach and try to adapt it to a technology that really arose from a whole new way of consuming media. And in doing that, they learned real quickly that it doesn't translate. You can't just take the traditional way of telling stories from Hollywood and put them into this technology and think that habits are going to follow your same production and distribution method. What this really calls for is a whole different way of storytelling. That's what China has figured out.
A lot of crews from bigger productions, they're doing films or web series. They think, oh, short drama, it's easy.
Yeah.
So they write their own scripts and they produce it, but it didn't perform well. Because when
Hmm.
I watch their films, it doesn't like short dramas
Hmm.
because their thinking is different.
It's funny because when after Mr. Williams, Flex was asking me, "Do you have any scripts?" I've been in Hollywood now for a long time, so I know lots of screenwriters. I reached out to a bunch of them, and I had a digital stack of 25 scripts. I'm looking through them, and I'm like, none of these are going to work. These were written for a traditional TV or cinema distribution, and it's not even a matter of like taking them and revising them and retrofitting them for a vertical mini short. You really have to start over. You really have to start from the beginning. Um, and that was a really quick lesson for me too, going where another realization where I was like, wow, this is a whole new world. And that's when I got even more excited too. Again, I've been in the industry for a long time. I have lots of other friends, directors, writers, producers, camera folks, editors. And even now, I have to explain what this is. It's still so new here. More and more people are understanding, are hearing about it in Hollywood here. But I've really had to explain it to people. And a lot of times they're like, okay, cool, not interested. Or B, like, oh, yeah, I totally get it. And then you bring them on board and still not getting it. But it's just a whole different way of thinking. It's not like it's super difficult, but like you were saying, it's just a whole new way of telling stories and your approach to everything from writing to production to consumption to distribution. It's really different.
Do you think those writers from your side can be trained to know
Yeah,
how to write those short dramas?
absolutely. Yeah. Just like everything, like our DPs learned it real quick. I learned it. A big part of my career has been in editing. I end up editing some of each of the films that we do. That was a learning curve, but once you get into it. And I think that the difficult part is for people who have been in the industry for a long time. Those habits are a lot harder to break, whereas the younger people that we bring on, they get it really quickly.
Back to the app you were going to build.
It's called Embr, and we have the minimal viable product, which is done now. We're like literally just a couple days ago. So we're going over that right now. We're planning to launch in like around July. And what we're going to do is purchase a couple films just to get it up and running from the secondary market. And then we're also going to be using these first 10 films that we're doing with Flex as our first real rollout of films that we've produced. We're really excited. As far as I know, we're still, if not the first wholly American one of the very early ones still. I'm really excited about it because it's going to allow us to really develop our stories that we want to tell on our own. Not that I don't love working with the Chinese platforms, but even with Flex, we still have to rely on them and get approval from them about the stories that we're developing. So this will give us a lot of autonomy and really the chance to pursue some real American audiences, explore different stories within the genres. We're going to stick with romance for right now because we know that works. But then we're going to start exploring different types of romance for different demographics. And then probably horror is the next one that we're going to start playing with as well. So we're really excited.
The promotion of those Chinese apps, they were highly rely on the ad promotion.
Yeah.
So what I heard is about at least they need to find an investment about 2.8 million US dollars
Yeah.
for buying the content, producing the content, also the ad promotion.
So what we're doing right now is we're bootstrapping the app right now. The co-production that we're doing with Flex, we're raising money for. Most of that's going to production, but some of it will be for marketing. And when we put those films up on our app, we'll be able to get data and numbers. And then we're going to take those that data and numbers to investors and raise an official round for the platform itself.
Do you think
Yeah.
that's the only way to promote? Because what I heard is they heavily rely on ad promotion.
hmm That's exactly what I heard too. And also, I was speaking to a couple of folks, is that there's only one place to do that sort of promotion and ad buy and that's in China, where they have companies and hundreds of people sitting around a computer making little tiny adjustments to the ad buys. Um, so that is one of our, value propositions to our investors as well, is that we do think there's a lot more ways to market the films and the platform itself. I can't give away too many secrets right now, but we're going to start. We're definitely, absolutely, it's going to be a big part of our marketing, but we do have a lot of other ideas of how to expand that. And I'm bringing on some pretty heavy hitters in the marketing world as well
Yeah.
with some really great ideas. So we're going to try to shake things up a bit in that way.
That's definitely not the only way to promote an app.
And it's interesting because one of the reasons why I think this isn't celebrity driven is that it's so immediate. And I was having this conversation with someone who produces films and has marketed films before, and they said, "Why don't you just get celebrities involved?" And I think the issue is that it's not celebrity driven because it is immediate. So most people, they see the app, they see an ad for the app or an ad for the film, and then they go and they download it and they start watching. Maybe they watch the first nine and maybe then they subscribe. But with celebrities, there's a run up to it. There's the anticipation of their next film. Because these things are getting churned out so quickly, we don't have the time to take advantage of that. It's just not as advantageous to do it that way. So that's why I do believe that in order to retain that immediacy, we're still going to have to depend on ad buys on social media networks. But how do you expand from there, especially in terms of getting people to recognize your brand as an app?
Celebrity like very popular stars, not the stars from short dramas, right?
Right. Yeah. And again, I don't think that's the way to go either, because then you're talking about a lot of money, and that's one of the other things that why Quibi failed is because of the economics. They had the economics all wrong. They thought they were spending $100,000 a minute on their films. We're spending less than $200,000 for an entire feature film. And Quibi, they were very much star dependent. They had all their big names in these films and they're spending a lot of money on it. And the economics just didn't work.
Is it only in English or you plan to launch in other languages?
So we're going to focus on English first, for sure. But we definitely have plans for global expansion, but we don't want to do it too fast. Because we want to make sure that we get the secret sauce right here. I can't give away too much, but we do have plans to roll it out in a different way than the Chinese platforms have been doing. Because honestly, I think we learned a lot from watching the other platforms come over here. So we're gonna take some of what we saw worked for them and change the stuff that we see that didn't work for them and expand into new markets that way.
Do you think AI is gonna change the world of production in total?
Yes, 100%. Um, This is a really great discussion. This could be a whole separate podcast in itself. But my sense is that regardless of how you feel about it, it's going to change the entertainment industry. And people are going to lose out, but other people are going to have a lot of success using these new tools that are going to be available to them. And I am both torn to know that it's going to drastically affect the industry that I grew up in, but I'm also very excited about the potential and the possibilities, because I'm looking forward to seeing a 15-year-old kid in his room making a film for vertical or for the movie theaters that becomes $1 million success when he did it in his bedroom. That's going to happen. To me, is really exciting about it. And I think what's really interesting is that the opportunity that vertical allows for too is it's not just a whole new way of telling stories, but it also opens up the ability to experiment with a whole range of new technologies that isn't going to be possible in Hollywood because Hollywood, you've heard the strikes in Hollywood here. Um, the workers, the writers, the actors, editor, everybody's asking to be protected from AI. Good for them. And they got a great deal of what they wanted. But now the studios can't use AI for most of those creative aspects, and they won't. But there's going to be a whole slew of people that are going to be using it. Chinese, I don't think have the same protections. The Indian film industry, I don't think has the same protection. And again, the kid sitting in his bedroom at 15 is sure as hell going to use these tools. That's how I'm excited, but also torn.
Do you have any plans to add AI in your vertical production?
I wouldn't say plans, but we've had discussions. I jump on it to get some ideas, just to see what sort of ideas it develops for a script. And honestly, I'm working on something right now because I had an idea. I entered a prompt into Chat GPT, reprompted it a few times. And together we came up with a kind of cool idea, which I think has a lot of potential. So now I'm going and I'm taking some of those ideas and rewriting it. And I'm really just doing it as an exercise to see where it's at right now. Um, it's a very big question in a lot of industries right now that where creative talents and creative professionals. But I do believe that we'll be seeing more. It's not too long where we'll see full-featured AI films out there. And I think it's going to happen on vertical first because it's the new frontier. I think writing is going to be replaced first, to be honest.
Oh,
And I think a big part of that is just the computing power. It's much easier for the AI systems to feed on text than images, and images are just, they're more difficult to get right. But I think that eventually it will be good enough where AI will take the place of actors and editors, but it's not going to happen right away. It's not going to all happen at once. I think we're going to start because you're already seeing like some really, really amazing work with AI where you really have to strain to look at it and say, and I think in a longer format film, it's a lot easier to tell too because it just doesn't have that emotion. That is the important thing that actors continue to bring to their craft right now is the emotion, and AI just can't deliver that just yet. But I also think that you're going to see AI be used in a way where people know it's AI. Animation, you know what you're getting. And I think people are going to use it to create AI films that aren't trying to hide what it is.
I also want to ask you about the hit list. Which one you like and why do you like it?
So the first one I watched was The Missing Master Chef. I really like Master Chef. That was a great, really well done. It had a lot of humor in it. Really well shot and edited. I really like the story. I was watching it with the subtitles, of course. I was watching it mostly on YouTube too, and that unfortunately had a lot of the music taken out and the sound effects, so it was just the dialogue, so I didn't get the full effect. But I really enjoyed that one.
It's actually what we called a male-oriented story. Do you know we
Yeah.
divide into male-oriented story and female-oriented story, like CEO story are female-oriented.
Yeah. And I read your post on the terms that we need to know as well. So thank you. So I'm trying to learn some of the language that you guys use over there as well in terms of describing these. So that was very helpful.
We start from web novels. So web
Yeah.
novels are divided to male-oriented and female-oriented. Actually, here in China, I think half are male-oriented stories. But overseas,
Yeah.
globally, that's only female-oriented stories that was popular.
I wanted to talk to you about that too, because
Yeah.
that is really something that I've heard everything across the board in terms of who's watching these things and what the most popular genres are. What I saw from this list is that it's really, it is all over the place. What was really interesting about the list was that there's several different genres. There's male, there's female, there's innocent, there's humor, there's some racy stuff in there, the SM stuff. And yeah, it's really all over the place. It's interesting to see that not one thing really dominated the list. And because I've been told that the demographic for these things is young women 25 to 45. That's the demographic that they keep throwing out to me. But I know that there's lots of men that watch these things. And the stuff that people are for the romance, that makes a lot of sense. But now seeing a lot of the platforms experiment with new genres.
There's also one that's male-oriented. Move aside, I'm the final boss. That's the typical male-oriented stories. What do you think of this story? Is it strange to you?
Um, that is definitely a little strange. It's not a type of story that resonates with me or many audiences that I'm familiar with. And again, that's one of those things that seems more Chinese. And I'm wondering, do you know of other films that have been localized for the American audience in that vein?
Mommy Don't Cry, Daddy Sorry. This one's definitely an adaptation of Chinese story.
I'll have to check that one out. I do remember speaking to someone about a script, and we had it was another script that we were developing, and they said, "Well, you really can't have a child in there unless it plays the certain role of being the driving force to bring them back together." So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the Chinese thing. Those couple bonded together because of a child.
Yep.
The CEO or whatever rich guy, he come
Yep.
back to his wife because of child.
The film that we did for Dreamy Short had a child that played that role. The film is called Falling in Love with My Ex-Husband Again. And we had a
Um,
kid in that. He's a great actor, Zach. That's the role that he played, that he kept pushing the parents to get back together. Mom didn't want to, but he kept standing up for his dad, saying, Dad really likes you. And, it was pretty cute. And I also saw Evil Bride versus the CEO's Secret Mom.
this one's adaptation as well.
It is. Okay. Yeah. I didn't like this one very much. Um, I didn't think it was done very well, to be honest. And it was, kind of took me out of it. A lot of the editing really took me out of it. But it was also kind of hard to watch, just how evil the daughter-in-law was. Kind of made me uncomfortable, but also did want me to see what happens to her and how the mom gets
Yeah.
revenge.
I had a script writer class before, and the teacher said he's also a writer. He said it's easier for you to make the audience angry. Angry is kind of
Right.
emotion. If you want to make them laugh, it's a little bit hard. But if you want
Yeah.
to make them angry, that's easier.
Yeah.
It wants to keep you hooked to the story.
That makes sense. That's what they say. Comedy is the hardest thing to write. And I think
Yeah.
in a way, the abusive genre really works because it's immediate. Anger is really immediate. It doesn't require nuance, which more complex emotions do. And again, that's why I think melodrama is so successful in this format, is because there is no time for nuance. Things need to be cut and dry, good and bad, and anger really plays into that. It's just a more base emotion.
What kind of genre you will explore in the future that haven't explored yet, especially for male audience?
100% horror. I think the horror is going to be something that we're going to be doing for our platform as well. It's very conducive to the format because you have the jump scares and the shocks and the getting your heart racing and everything. So that's the one that we want to explore next and see how that goes.
Why do you think it's fit for this vertical drama? It's not a big
Yep.
screen. How do you get
Right.
people get shocked?
Well, that's a good question. Not sure if it's going to work, but I think fear being a very base emotion,
Mm.
that is really what we're going to, the eeriness of it still plays on the small screen. A lot of it's going to be playing on the characters' fear and getting that performance out of them. So you're really reading the emotion of the characters themselves. Because when we're framing films in this format, it really is about capturing the emotion of the actor, and that's really all you can really do. So I think that so much of the audience is consumed by what is happening. It has to happen with just the actor's performance. I had conversations with people where like we've tried things, but romance is the only thing that does work. I think that this industry is so new, this format's so new that there's just a lot of room for experimentation and people need to start taking more risks.
What about the others? I especially want to know about the male audience, because besides romance, what else do you guys want to watch?
Myself, I like thrillers and action films. Those are going to have to be higher budgets. They're just higher budgets because you have to worry about stunts and all that aspect. But and I'm not sure how well that's going to translate on the smaller screen
Mm.
itself. So that's not something that I want to jump into right away. But I do think sci-fi and fantasy, I think we can do a lot more with that. And part of that is what you were talking about is you can create background worlds via Unreal Engine and volume walls and stuff like that. So I think once that the cost of that technology starts coming down a lot more, we'll be able to get into some really cool stuff in that genre too.
We have sci-fi here. The
Yeah.
story is about the person know the world is going to end, maybe burned by ice or something. So he
Oh, cool.
back to the time before that, and he grabbed everything for the future. I did perform well. It's the
Oh,
early
wow.
story.
And it's exciting to see a Chinese cultural export come to the United States. That to me is really exciting as well. How this thing is just connecting people around the globe. We're already well connected through our social media and our memes and stuff like this, but this is one more thing that can really solidify us as a human race.